2 years ago on this platform, I called out Richard Dawkins for promoting a book by a white supremacist, which I supported with receipts so lengthy you would have thought that I had bought a Diet Coke at Walgreens. Because Dawkins is atheist Pope, though, a lot of viewers rushed to defend him and accused me of just seeing Nazis everywhere, even in scientific research. So today I want to talk a little bit about a new undercover investigation that found that there are Nazis everywhere, especially in scientific research. And here's the kicker. The Nazis are now paying YouTubers to convince you that there is a scientific basis for their bigotry. Hope Not Hate is an anti-fascist organization in the UK that has been pushing back on various forms of extremism since began in 2004. Last year, they teamed up with The Guardian newspaper and Der Spiegel to send an activist undercover as a potential investor for an organization called the Human Diversity Foundation, a far-right organization formed with the goal of spreading race pseudoscience. Though it was officially established just 2 years ago, it turns out that HDF is simply a rebranding of the Pioneer Fund, which, as I explained in that previous video, was established in 1937 as a tool to distribute Nazi propaganda films in the United States and also to fund and publish bogus scientific studies conducted by Nazis and Nazi sympathizers. In case you think things have improved for the Pioneer Fund since its founding or since its rebranding, the undercover recordings make it clear, no, they're just as Nazi as ever. One of the three leaders of HDF, German white nationalist influencer Erich Ahrens, is caught on tape admitting that he was trying to form a network of elites that he positively likened to Hitler's SS. When reporters reached out to Ahrens to let him know that they heard his remarks, he defended himself by saying he could have chosen any select inner circle as an example. Like he could have said a Lions Club. He just happened to say Hitler's SS. Sure, we've all been there giving prepared remarks at a secret dinner where we're describing our vision of an elite group of men, and we struggle to think of an example to illustrate what we're talking about. And the first thing that comes to mind is Hitler's paramilitary wing that oversaw the genocide of the Jewish people. Let he who is without sin, etc., etc. It's like trying to come up with a breakfast food and saying, I don't know, whatever Hitler liked to eat. Very understandable, very relatable. But as the German press reported, at the event where he was secretly recorded telling the undercover activist that his elite group would be like the SS, his business partner tried to follow up, it's actually like an identitarian Antifa. Ahrens corrected him, it's not Antifa, it's FA, meaning it's not anti-fascist, it's fascist. So yeah, I guess that's about as clear as it gets, huh? Crucially, this undercover investigation also uncovered one of the major funders of this Nazi organization, American tech bro rich dude Andrew Conroe, who made his millions by creating the dating site Adult Friend Finder, which he then sold to the penthouse porn empire because what else are you going to do with something called Adult Friend Finder? That's the filthiest thing I can imagine naming a dating site. He gave HDF more than $1 million, but when journalists reached out to him to ask about it, he claimed that the organization had deviated from its original mission of nonpartisan academic research. Now again, HDF is just a rebrand of the Pioneer Fund, which has spread Nazi propaganda for the past 90 years or so. But sure, we've all been there, burdened by millions, possibly billions of dollars that we give away willy-nilly. And sure, $1 million or so might go to funding Nazi propaganda. Another $50,000 might fund far-right dipshit Christopher Rufo. And yeah, lots of money might go to Charlie Kirk and other anti-immigration bigoted organizations, but that just happens, So who else is part of this new but not new Nazi project, Human Diversity Project? Well, Hope Not Hate has published a long and very informative piece that looks at these scientists publishing this racist pseudoscience. And friends, this is the point in my research where my brain exploded, because it turns out I know one of the Nazis. I used to think of him as not a friend per se, but a friendly acquaintance who I kind of liked, and he's a goddamn Nazi now. Way back in the early 2000s, I got my start in this industry of being skeptical about things online through an online forum known as the JREF Forum. That's the James Randi Educational Foundation. Randi is the guy who offered $1 million prize to anybody who can prove that they have paranormal powers. His forum was a welcome space for skeptics and atheists to hang out and chat. And that's where I met and got to know Brian Pesta, a psychologist working at a university in Ohio who was known on the forum for really crass dick jokes. Like, I'm not exaggerating. Here is just one example I could find from the sister forum of the JREF in which he describes his ideal method of bleaching his anus. That was par for the course for Pesta, but, you know, okay, it was the early cringe shock days of the early 2000s. We just accepted it. So I became friends with him and his wife, who appeared in the first Skepchick calendar back when we did those. And it looks like they're now divorced, so I'm not going to mention her name or show her photo or anything. I'm just going to wish her the very best. But Pesta got up to quite a bit in the years since we used to banter online. For years now, he has been accepting money from the Pioneer Fund to publish racist papers in places like Mankind Quarterly, exploring such topics as, does IQ cause race differences in well-being? And does cognitive ability mediate black-white income disparities in the USA? Spoiler alert, he thinks the answer to both of those is yes. He co-authors often with Emil Kierkegaard, the Danish white supremacist who founded HDP by being gifted the Pioneer Fund's holdings, and who, in addition to calling for a white ethno-state, also thinks child pornography should be legal and that the age of consent should be lowered to 13 or earlier if puberty starts earlier. Fun fact, Kierkegaard is apparently deeply in debt because he tried to sue someone for calling him a pedophile, and he had to drop the case and pay all of the legal fees because, yeah, that's the kind of stuff pedophiles say, dude. He then legally changed his name, which might be to get out of paying those fees, or maybe it's to hide the fact that he's a big old Nazi, just like how the Pioneer Fund is now the Human Diversity Foundation, but who knows, not me. Anyway, back to Pesta. He actually was, as he claimed back in the day, a psychologist at a university in Ohio, which always seemed funny to me because he obviously had just like a pile of festering mouse testicles in place of a brain. But he was a psychologist, a working psychologist. He's not anymore. In 2022, Pesta was fired from Cleveland State University and stripped of his tenure for serious violations of our policies governing academic research. And further, he was also found by the National Institutes of Health to have misused its data and was banned from its use for 3 years in what CSU alleged was the most serious and longest such ban in NIH history. Pesta used that data in a controversial research report that suggested Black people are genetically predisposed to be less intelligent than white people, part of a larger body of scholarship Pesta had authored on the topic of genetics, race, and inheritance that, as the Chronicle of Higher Education reports, flew under the radar until recently. Hilariously, Pesta also filed a lawsuit against the university claiming they violated his freedom of speech by firing him, and he asked that they give him a bunch of money and also admit that his racist ideas had scientific merit. The judge ruled against him, writing, Pesta's theory is not supported by the facts. The evidence submitted to the courts overwhelmingly supports defendant's version of the events. Shout out to Rational Wiki for finding that and also having an entire page on Pesta. Man, those bigots just have the worst time in courts of law. It's a real shame. Since his sacking and his embarrassing loss in court, Pesta has moved over to be a full-time racist for HTP, appearing here in the organization's Monday morning planning sessions, which is how I confirmed that this was the same Brian Pesta I used to know. In one team meeting, Kierkegaard suggests that they won't be able to get one racist paper published unless Pesta softens up the language for them. Once it was published, they planned to promote it through their various channels, which include the YouTube channel The Jolly Heretic, which posts vaguely atheist and skeptic type content. The heretic in question is a white supremacist named Edward Dutton, who is also on HDP's payroll, and in only a few years, he's managed to get more than 100,000 subscribers to uncritically accept his promotion of scientific racism, plus a Substack that apparently brought in $62,000 last year. In a hilarious aside, HDP higher-up Matthew Frost told Hope Not Hate's undercover reporter that Dutton is annoying and requires micromanagement to get anything done. But hey, at least he's stupid enough to just do whatever they tell him to do. My God, I almost feel bad for Dutton. Imagine that it's been revealed that you've been accepting money from Nazis to spread their misinformation, and then at the same time finding out that they think you're an annoying idiot. On second thought, I actually don't feel bad for him because fuck him. He's hanging out with Nazis. He sucks. So yeah, I started reading about this investigation, expecting to learn uncomfortable facts about how far into scientific circles Nazis have infiltrated, but I had no idea that it would end up right where I started, which is confronting the skeptic/new atheist to Nazi apologist pipeline. Pesta, Dawkins, Michael Shermer, Sam Harris, so many of these people so many of these white guys who I used to rub elbows with now seem to be in the business of spreading white supremacist talking points, whitewashing them, so to speak, in scientific lingo, so that the masses will take them seriously, just as, many people were doing 100 years ago. So the next time you hear a science communicator sharing the completely debunked idea that certain ethnic groups are less intelligent than white people, take a moment to wonder who is paying their bills. And, on a positive note, this is all a huge win because this sting convinced that billionaire to stop funding these Nazis, at least for now. The reveal that the Russian government was funding right-wing Americans has apparently now led to Tim Pool saying he's going to shut down his white supremacist propaganda show. So it turns out if we go after the money, we win. As for me, no need to worry. I remain funded entirely by my patrons and by viewers like you who watch, like, share, and subscribe. In fact, let's go ahead and cut to that video of my dog Indy, so named for my favorite Nazi puncher's dog, and check out the names of some of my top patrons. I'm going to start doing a special once a month end of video voiceover where I shout out my producer tier patrons as a little thank you. So big thanks to October's patron pals, Alex Forkosh, Cord Wainer-Jones, Eric Sawinda, Goldie, Johnny Wallflower, Keith Bostick, Christina Foss, Luke Swanson, Michael Cassidy, Michael Siddell, Mike Quinton. I have so many Mikes. Rick Klein, Samuel Howard, Sean Alt, and Vicini. Thank you so much, guys.